I'm Sandra Parker. In the importance of emotion as the engine for growth, one thing that we need to keep in mind is that all that glitters is not gold. There's a big difference between core emotion and defensive emotion. As the professional pitchman for emotion that I feel like I'm becoming here, I argue a lot for the value of feeling and feeling emotion. And I talk about the gifts that emotion gives us: authenticity, motivation, meaning, connection. But we need to really be clear here what we're talking about, because not all emotion is growth promoting. And I think people kind of intuit that. They kind of know. I mean, they see people spilling all over the place and having big feelings that seem completely unproductive and repetitive and don't take them anywhere. And so with that kind of intuitive knowledge, some of us are, a little skeptical about this whole having feelings gig, Those messy people around there not getting anything done and just feeling and reeling and spinning off into outer space. I don't really want to do that. I don't mind being a robot. At least I kind of go in a straight line and get things done. Right? And I want to make it really clear that those are not the two options: to deal without feeling or to feel without dealing. There's a particular kind of feeling that is ultimately and always growth promoting, and that's core emotion. All right? Core emotion. The phrase I like to use is that all that glitters is not gold. Okay? Like fool's gold, emotion can all look the same on the surface. A person is crying, well, they must be sad. A person is stomping around, they must be mad. As a therapist, I've developed kind of a nose for sniffing out if something is true or not. And many people who aren't therapists actually have pretty good kind of detectors in their bodies. There are little clues that tell us whether it's a certain small muscle around the eyes that's either activated or not, or changes in blood flow or muscle tension in other parts of the body. There are clues that sometimes we're aware of and sometimes we're not consciously aware of that tell us when there is a match or a mismatch in terms of what that person's expressing emotionally. In fact, some of this information is used to do lie detection. For example, border guards are trained in this kind of stuff. That's off on a different track. But what I'm talking about is that emotion is in fact not always what it seems, okay? And what I'm wanting to draw attention to is defensive emotion versus core emotion. So core emotion is this flow of information and energy. It's our organismic response to incoming stimuli, filtering through my temperament, my history, my biology, and informing me of my relationship with the world and who I am. Defensive emotion is something crusted on top of that. It's emotion that, for whatever reason, developmentally, I have permission to feel, as opposed to what may not be acceptable, or perhaps was not acceptable when I was growing up. A classic example would be weepiness. Weepiness. It's something that I sit across from in the room sometimes, and we'll be working on something and someone's starting to get a little bit mad about something, and then rather than moving into that beautiful heat and outward push of anger, planting a feet on the ground, they do this imploded sort of thing, and then these tears come out of the eyes. And they're actually underneath these tears, they're really angry, but they present this weepy, sort of imploded, sort of victim-like teariness. And, I realize that it doesn't sound very nice to talk about someone crying in this way, but it doesn't move me. When I see those tears, it's not like when someone's really sad and my heart opens up and I'm resonating. Something comes up in my little detector in my body that says, that's actually not core emotion, Sandra. Don't track that. Don't go with that. You got to get down underneath here. You got to help this person feel safe enough that they're allowed to have their anger. So that mask or that crust of this sadness is probably because that person was never allowed to be angry, and that sadness was more acceptable from where they come from. And that's, you know, they present with this more martyr-like victim kind of thing because they can't stand up and say no. So they just go inward. Right? Conversely, somebody who's stomping around and seems very, very angry, it may not actually be anger. It may be that this person was never allowed to ever cry. And they've got tears that are, you know, backed up from forever. And when something difficult happens and they are faced with an experience of loss or helplessness, rather than feeling loss and helplessness, they appear to feel really mad. But it doesn't have the forward movement of core emotion. Emotion lifts you, carries you, takes you somewhere. This is cyclical. They get mad, and then they get mad, and then they get mad, and nothing ever seems to change. Right? There's this kind of repeated litany over and over and over with no forward movement. Right? And you know that underneath that is something soft and fluid and that wants to lift them and carry them. And again, the message is we need to be safe to grow. We need to create enough safety for this person to be able to feel that emotion. The point of all of this is just to say that any old emotion isn't going to do it. It has to be emotion that's down from the core of you. And the hallmark of core emotion is that it carries you someplace new. That as you are moved by the energy of emotion, energy in motion, you are taken to somewhere new by the end of it. There's a feeling at the end of that wave of calm clarity, a feeling of connectedness, a feeling of being more who you really are. And if it's after you've had a good expression of your anger, or a deep expression of tears, or a full expression of joy, and it's at the end of that, not at the peak, interestingly, it's not at the peak of the emotion, it's as that wave trails off, and you find yourself somewhere new, and you feel more you. That's the glitter that you're looking for. That's real gold. That's the emotion that grows you.